Hey folks, welcome to an exciting episode of Entra Chat. For the first time, we are doing this live as well. So there are a few people joining us live to listen in. We have an amazing panel of folks here to talk about all of the Ignite news related to Entra. And I want to let everyone introduce themselves before we jump into all the hot goodness that's coming up.
Yeah, sure can. Hey, everybody. Nathan McNulty, Senior Security Solutions Architect at Patriot Consulting. I'm a Microsoft MVP in security, and I've been around since, doing the Office 365 or Live ADU since 2010. So been an intro for just a little bit of time. And it'll be fun.
Campbell, like Nathan, Microsoft Security MVP. I lead Microsoft Security at a company called Threatscape, and I get involved in kind of everything to do with 365 security. Jack of all trades, master of none, that kind of deal. Yeah, I've been overwhelmed with the Ignite news like everyone else, so I'm looking forward to kind of learning a thing or two as well from the other guys on the call.
So my name is Martin Sandren. I'm the product lead for Identity and Access at Entra AI. So I do round meatballs and flat packages across the world. And I'm actually not a security MVP, so I'm guessing the black sheep in this connection.
Yes, cool. And last but not least, Thomas.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation, Meryl. My name is Thomas Naunheim. I'm a cybersecurity architect at Clucania and Microsoft Security MVP. And it was an exciting week so far with a lot of announcements and news. So I guess we have a couple of things to discuss.
Yes, awesome. Yeah, so there's so much to cover. We don't even know where we are going to start. But I want to first go around the room and ask each person, what is your favorite feature that was announced? Like, there's a lot, but what's the one thing for you that stood out that you are like really excited about using or learning?
So I'm actually have a very practical item that now that we've started to get proper passkeys, which makes at least for tier 0 and tier 1, highly phishing resistant. Then, of course, the attackers move to the next thing, which to a certain degree is the service desk. So I'm very happy that the account recovery flows are now coming in so that we can really start improving that part.
Nice. Yeah, so Passkeys and account recovery gets one on the bingo card.
Yeah, it's a split between that and the passkey profiles. Yeah, and the syncable and all that stuff, right?
Yes. Okay, cool. So, wow, 2 for Passkeys.
Make it 3. The passkey profiles and syncable passkeys are honestly life-changing. That is such a huge win. I mean, syncable passkeys, I guess that's maybe a debate that could be had, but I think for adoption, it's fantastic. And then I guess I'd be remiss not to mention some of the cool stuff coming around Entra Agent ID as well.
Yes, nice. Thomas?
So another +1 for the sync passkeys. But honestly, alongside of the sync passkeys, I would say there was some additional announcement regarding passwordless, especially when it comes to the new remediation feature and Entra ID protection. So I would say alongside of the big announcement of Agent ID, it was a lot of things that has been announced, which is really a great improvement. And there was a couple of those things that help us a lot, and really like also the small announcements alongside of the big announcements.
Yes, yeah. We're going to cover all of them and hear what our people think from someone like Martin, who runs identity for a big company like IKEA, and those of you are helping customers deploy and teach others and so on. So, synced passkeys. Who wants to just explain to people what it is and like what's different from Passkeys? Has been there on with Entra for a while now. Passwordless has been there for many years, and support for Passkeys came last year as well. So what's the new thing? Like, why is everyone talking about synced Passkeys, and what does it mean?
So historically, we had device-bound credentials, right? So with FIDO2, the private key was always in the security enclave, never left the device. And now in this case, we're opening up to iCloud, Google Password Manager, 1Password, Bitwarden, whatever your provider might be. And we're allowing for that private key to not be stored necessarily just on that device, but also sync into that passkey provider. That's the synced component, right? And so now because it's leaving a secure enclave, there's always that like, okay, that adds additional risk. And how do we compensate for that? And so it's a great conversation to have, honestly, around like, well, how do we allow for passwords? And users put passwords into password managers. Those get synced too. And like,
Yes.
and then, but yeah, MFA is decoupled. And anyway, so there's a huge conversation around it. But yeah, that's the gist of the synced.
Nice. Okay. So I've had various opinions, right? So in the past, there's always been device bound. People have been very happy with that. Windows Hello for Business has been there like forever now and was the OG of passkeys, I would say. And that's been always device bound. You set it up on your laptop. The passkey never went everywhere. You wipe the laptop. You had to reset it up again on a new laptop. Then we had the authenticator support for passkeys came in last year, right? And that also stayed on the same device. And people were all comfortable with that. So now the synced passkeys, the neat thing for end users is you get onto a new phone and it goes through iCloud, syncs back in to your new phone. And for them, it's just going to be magical, right? They get a new phone at Christmas, they sign in and it's just going to work. Like there is no additional step. And then we have the admin scratching their head going, no, you didn't register it on this phone. But I think for the industry, the thing that Apple and like everyone wants passkeys to replace passwords. If you think of the consumer side of it, right? We want to get rid of passwords and we want passkeys to work. And for passkeys to achieve that ubiquitous way that passwords have is to be able to do everything that passwords can do. So which means if passwords synced and you get a new phone and they work on the new device, that's what passwords did. It should work the same. And I know on the iPhone, you can even airdrop passkeys to another phone. And so everything you can do with the password, you should be able to do with the passkey because as a consumer, you just want it to work, right? Like not suddenly be prevented from, hey, I can't sign into this on my iPad because it doesn't sync and so on. So for enterprise and for us in this world, we need to make some decisions, right? So there are a few different camps on who should use sync passkeys, who shouldn't, various different options. Martin, how do you see that playing out? How have you been thinking about this whole problem?
I think we're doing the compromise, basically saying that for the admin tier 0 and tier 1, I think it makes a lot of sense to say, I will prioritize security and I will have device bound. But for normal people, synced passkey is so much better than a password. And it's so much better than push MFA and SMS MFA, etc. So even though there's a slight risk, it's still a factor 10 uplift. So let's take the factor 10 at a bigger population than trying to enforce device bound on everyone.
Right. Cool. Others have thoughts on what's your current experience with we've had device bound for a year, right? Have you worked on deployments? What has your experience been working with customers or, rolling it out in your own org? What are the challenges you faced or has it gone like swimmingly smoothly and everyone's using it? Thoughts?
I can comment on that. I can jump in there. I think you're kind of touching on what up until this point has been the biggest barrier for passkey adoption is that initial onboarding of the passkey process, having to guide users to do it in quite a manual effort. And when it comes to this idea that we can now allow users to leverage their own password manager, such as iCloud or 1Password or something like that, the obvious benefit to me, and this is a silly thing that comes to mind for me, it's like, hey, if you like your password manager, you get to keep your password manager. We're not going to force you to use an app that you're unfamiliar with. And I think Martin hits the nail on the head with regards to having different security profiles for different folks, because we have different risk tolerance for different folks. That's going to be a decision for every single organization. But, at the end of the day, you said earlier, we want users to experience passkeys like passwords. Passwords are not going away anytime soon because they are so easy to use. We need to make passkeys as easy to use as passwords, with that huge benefit that, unlike a password, that private key ain't going to leave the device so it doesn't get lost, right? So that's, I think, trading things off the adoption is far more important at this stage.
Nice. Nathan, Thomas, your experience deploying passkeys over the last
I think one of the interesting points, and I totally agree with Rue, it's the question about risk tolerance, right? And the right audience for the passkeys. So at the end, for example, in the past, something like a device-bounded passkey in an authenticator app will be maybe also not the best one for the privileged users, because maybe they have their admin devices and you don't like to allow Bluetooth communication to use this kind of device-bounded passkey. And I found really interesting that Microsoft has shared some recent statistics about the MFA adoption. And we can still
Yes.
see there's some room of improvement overall in
Yes.
by customers.
Not some, a lot.
And
It's
to
an
give more
understatement.
to give more options, what could be the passkey is always a great benefit. And I think, especially for some customers, and that is the case maybe particular in Germany, we have all the time the discussion, hey, I don't like to install the Authenticator app for my company on the device because it's my personal device.
Yes.
And having a lower entry point that there's no additional software and it is full native UX like on the Apple platform helps, in my opinion. And with the whole passkey profiling that now allows to set such granular scope who is allowed to use passkeys that are synchronized is a really game changer for many adoption projects from my point of view.
One thing that comes to mind, just to echo if I can think in my head, what's this? I think the general consensus here is syncable passkeys on the whole are a win. Maybe not for every single persona in an organization, but on the whole, it's a win.
Absolutely. Nathan, what's been your experience?
Yeah, so device bound, a lot of people don't want to install the Microsoft Authenticator app, right? So we do get that pushback, whether it's even country like laws that says they can't or not. They're still like, I don't want to put that on there. We also have the fractured Android system, which has always been an issue because I think it's 14 and up, right, is required for Microsoft Authenticator. So this opens it up all the way back to Android 9, whether you'd want to allow that old of a phone to do stuff, right? Because that's quite old. But it does really help. So the approach that we've been talking about with customers is we're going to focus on device bound first, and then we're going to have an exception group that is going to be governed by an access package. And then when people do need access to the weaker methods like Async, then we just open that up for user groups as needed. It's kind of like we handle with SMS or any other slightly weaker auth method than we would want for our baseline across the whole org.
Yes, yeah. Something that Thomas mentioned didn't really cross my mind, but the common challenge, even in Australia, there are lots of unions and laws and about, asking users to force them to use a phone is not something that an employer can do. That whole thing goes away. They don't need to install anything. They just come in and sign in. How do you approach it when you get pushback saying it's going to be synced and then I'm relying on the security of the various password managers? What are your mitigation for that question? Because I'm sure a lot of the folks will be listening and when they go and try to speak to their teams about deploying it, there is this pushback they're going to get from the various teams, right? People who are really like not in the space. So how would you answer some of those questions that come?
I can take a stab at this because I had a similar discussion recently. I've tried to answer this in a way that doesn't make me sound like a typical consultant and say it depends. But a large part of this will come down to risk profiling. So if I give an example, one of our clients works with VIP folks, right? Folks that you would see in the news, and as individuals, I need to protect their account. Well, for those types of folks who certainly historically, before iCloud got very good at doing MFA by default, there was a large type of attack on iCloud accounts to leak photos and things like that. And so maybe for that type of persona where you're that high profile and maybe you get public emails and things like that, honestly, something like a good old fashioned FIDO2 key is a very reasonable approach. For everyone else, putting aside admins and tier 0 and all that kind of things, part of my answer to that question is very similar to my answer to the question of, and we're getting into real Entra geeky stuff here, is cross-tenant trust profiles, right? So for example, in Entra, we can configure a trust profile to say, hey, we're going to rely on the device compliance or the MFA of other tenants for our guests. And one of the common objections to that is, well, how do I trust the security of that tenant? How do I know their compliant devices are very good? And similarly, you might get a question on this as well. How do I know that their password manager security is very good? And my gut reaction to this, and it's a little bit crude, is, well, frankly, it's better than almost anything we're doing just now. And it's almost always better than doing nothing. So it's all of this is not about trying to strive towards perfection. It's about trying to strive for something better than the status quo. And that's kind of my response to that type of question.
So what we actually see most of the time, like MDR, it's you see like an immediate login to an account. There's not a password spray. There's no guessing. We didn't see the user phish, and it's always like, well, how did they even? Your users are reusing their passwords and their work accounts. They're going and signing up for consumer services. They're using the same password. That service gets compromised. And Troy Hunt has to send out an email, right? And so one of the cool things about Passkeys, we're just putting a public key in there. Nobody cares if that gets compromised. Like it doesn't do anything for them. And they need to compromise the company's private keys to actually make a challenge and then get you to authenticate, but they already compromised the company anyway. So they really we need to do better threat modeling, right? As a part of that conversation, that like what they're doing currently with passwords is untenable. They're going to get phished. That's a much higher likelihood than, somebody's going to compromise their personal account and then add a device, get the user to approve them adding the device to their iCloud, right? And then sync the password or passkey and know the PIN to unlock the passkey. Like there's so many different steps. I'm like, that's a very unlikely scenario as compared to they're just going to send an email to your user. They're going to put in password, answer the MFA prompt, and they're in and they compromise your organization. So I think it's important to kind of consider what we're doing, like Bruce said today.
Martin, I think you were going to say something, right? On
Well, I think you shouldn't underestimate they having a nice sign on the wall saying that, for tier 0 and tier 1, we do device bound. For the rest, we do synced. And suddenly people they accept it somehow. And in this case, I think in general, but of course, what kind of industry you're in. But, I'm in retail fundamentally. So for us, it's all about making sure that we can sell furniture at a price that is acceptable to their money. Yes, syncable keys have some form of an attack, but it's so much better than alternative. And that's, at the end of the day, is what it's about.
So overall, I think that's also something relation to what Nathan said about the threat modeling. So overall, we should consider what are the potential attacks on the password manager, and also what are the devices that will be used for sync passkeys. So for example, if we are more in a closed enterprise device approach, and of course, nobody should use in this scenario, maybe for companies that do not allow or bring your own device, there's more the approach, okay, I've got my Windows device, my macOS device, and I use Windows Hello or Platform SSO, and the passkey will be there only on the local device. But if we're talking about also some scenarios where bring your own device is allowed so that I can partly use some of the application from my own device, then the other question come into the play, what happens after the authentication? Because maybe I have long-lived token artifacts also on the device, and that are also potential attack technique. And when we are talking, for example, on the unmanaged macOS device, there's also partly tokens in the keychain in the Apple password cached. And so they are also an attack path. So it's not only about the passkey, it's also about the tokens that are a part of the credential manager, in this case, Apple Passwords. And I guess when we take a look on the password manager, they have some built-in protection, like Apple is doing some stuff that is not quite easy to exfiltrate passwords from there. Of course, there are different level of security and how secure our password manager. And I think a lot of things needs to be considered in this aspect. So I would say, depending on the strategy that you like to do, if you like to allow unmanaged devices and what is your strategy, what resources are accessible from this device, that must be overall considered for such threat modeling.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely a good point, right? You're already having tokens and they're syncing, the browser's already syncing passwords, right? So
cookies,
yeah, cookies, passwords, like Chrome, they're all syncing when these users join in. And how is this? It's a more secure form of doing it. And I know for a fact that with iCloud and Google Password Manager both, it's a lot more harder to social engineer and get access to that account than even enterprise, right? Because with that, like I've had to do it a few times for my kids and so on. They actually make you do an ID verification. Like you need to show your passport, they scan, or your driver's license, they scan that, then do a match with your face against that and do the backend check to make sure it's valid. So that like it's very well protected, right? So I think I don't think a lot of orgs protect their accounts the same way from, social engineering, as well as Google Cloud and the iCloud accounts, right? So that brings us to the next feature that was announced, account recovery, which is a cool one. Who has looked at it and who is excited to talk about explaining what it is, the account recovery feature?
I can take it if nobody else does.
Yeah,
I was on the preview. I set it up everything already, so I can
Nice.
speak to that. Yeah. Yeah, I got to work with them during the UX design and stuff. It was fun. User, like as we move towards Passkeys, right? One of the problems we're going to have is how do we bootstrap a user? I don't have 365, help desk or, 24/7 365, right? They're not always available. How do I let my user recover? And also help desk costs money, right? They have things they need to be focusing on, and maybe recovering users isn't what you want them to spend their time on. So total recovery, or the account recovery, is you're going to use a third-party provider, identity provider, right? IDEMIA, like Clear kind of thing. Whatever you've done for TSA or global entry or something. So there's 3 providers currently. Hopefully they'll add more, but you subscribe to one of those. Each of them have a trial, so you can play around for a little bit. It's going to be roughly $1 per recovery, which is still going to be a lot less expensive than your help desk spending time on the phone with a customer, right? And anyway, so they verify their identity. So this is going to be a hard part for some employees. They will have to use their government issued ID, right? So passport, driver's license, whatever that is. That will validate against IDEMIA or LexisNexis, some of the others. And then they will get a credential stored in Microsoft Authenticator that is a verifiable credential. It's kind of like a passkey stored on a blockchain. And that will bootstrap their verified ID and allow them to get a passkey and then have access to their account again. And so that's like if they lost their phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you could do for a new hire, right? Go through some of those processes.
Nice. Yeah. So from the stats that I've heard, and I think it's been published, is usually you're thinking of this maybe 4 times a year somebody would use it, right? Like maximum. It's not something you would use all the time, right? This is where the user has lost everything completely. And then rather than calling help desk and just giving them answering a bunch of questions and then suddenly getting access to an account, which is what a lot of the social engineering attacks and things start with. You do this. Martin, what are your thoughts? Interested in knowing, because you would be considering this, right? And you'll be seeing, all the social engineering things happening as well.
Yeah, this is a really interesting area because this was quite big during COVID when we had to do a lot of remote onboardings, and then it kind of went back into the background, but now it's coming up again, basically because it's the easiest way to attack an enterprise. So you had the big Clorox issue a while ago, etc. One thing, Nathan, perhaps you looked into this, because one of the challenges that you have is, of course, you need to somehow bind the government-issued ID to your Entra or to your systems. And of course, in theory, you could use some form of your social security ID or similar, but you really don't want to do that unless you're forced. So I was a bit interested, what's the best practice for the binding between the government-issued IDs and the corporate systems?
Yeah, so the neat thing, that's actually handled by the identity provider, right? Identity verification provider. So that's going to be LexisNexis. There's an Autotena TX or something, I think, and IDEMIA. So it would be like when you sign up for global entry, right? They do a background check and they validate your credentials against whoever your government is. They're the ones actually issuing it. And then you are trusting the credential that they issued to your user to provision them. That is a really interesting thing too, because it's going to be based on their legal documents. So people are like, I go by Nate, right? For example. Then if my name in Entra is Nate McNulty, it's not going to match the data that comes over from the identity verification provider. So we definitely need to make sure that legal names are in use for those to match up properly with the user.
So that's because that's one of the enterprise problems you always have is that a lot of people prefers to go by their preferred name instead of the legal name, because you have everything from people who get married and divorced and may not have changed their legal name. You have people who do a transitioning on gender transitioning, etc. So I could see the advantage of using names, but there are also some bit complex areas. But as always, if you can do 95% or 98% of the cases, then the 2%, perhaps you don't need to fall back to your support desk in those cases.
I wasn't aware of that
Maybe-
name thing. That's a good thing to know, because I would feel that because I never use my full name, because my full
Right.
name looks like a Wi-Fi password, so I don't bother. Well,
What
good to
is
know.
your full name? It's a secret.
well, it's a secret. Yeah, can't let anyone know. It's actually my password. Can't share that.
It's on a need to know basis. Thomas,
Yeah, but it
your
will be
thoughts?
also interesting to see what maybe come in future with, for example, the adoption of the European Union digital wallet, so that you have a native opportunity to verify with your legal passport. And maybe there will be no need for a third party. That will be the identity verification. And that would, in my opinion, really nice to have, because then with the combination of verified ID, we can do their liveness check, and then using directly this digital wallet would be really, really nice, in my opinion. Even I totally agree on the situation with the full name, because, for example, I have the pleasure to wear a Christian name, and I never will use them in my combination. It's just in my passport and then official letters by the government, but never in my public name. So there will be some tough challenges.
Cool. So account recovery, yeah. So that's it's an add-on. So as Nathan mentioned, it's like a pay-per-use thing, but it's really low. And when you think of a cost of someone calling the help desk, because I know people measure calls to the help desk, and there's a cost attached to it. So when you compare with that and how much time that person spends, even not doing their work, trying to get this recovery, if it's all set up, it helps save in the long term.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
the classical Forrester $75 per password reset. So compare that to the $2. That's a very good deal.
Exactly.
And it's really nice that you have per event, because one challenge that when you try to make the business case for this is if you have a fixed pay, they can be quite significant if you have a decent sized organization, and it's hard to kind of make the business case for that. Now you can kind of get a bunch of money and then just try it out and see. That makes for a much easier transitioning into this. And once you get into it, I'm very sure that you will feel that this is a huge benefit for the organization, both from a security and from a productivity side.
Exactly. So Martin, did you say $7 to $5 for is that like 75? Wow. I didn't realize it was that big.
That's the total cost of the per password reset.
Per password reset. Wow, that's huge. Okay, so that's then it's sort of like a no-brainer, right? If you can reduce a lot of that, and then it's a stronger verification. It's not just someone doing it over the phone and having no idea who is answering on the other end.
And there isn't really a good way of doing this. Of course, you can make some check like against your employee ID or equivalent, but that can easily be stolen. You can, of course, hand it to your manager, but then your manager has to be present, and manager perhaps can do some form of a verification. And you also still have the risk that with deep fakes and so on, it's possible that you can fake towards your manager if you're an attacker. So overall, a really good improvement. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah. Nathan?
So one other kind of neat thing is to understand that these are verifiable credentials. It's a W3C standard, right?
Yes.
And both Apple and Google actually have a wallet API. And so just like we had with Microsoft Authenticator, we only allowed for passkeys stored in that. There is the possibility in the future, right? If Microsoft wants to, they could open that up further. And, because as people are starting to do, I got my driver's license on my phone or whatever it might be, eventually users might already have everything they need. They don't even have to do anything. They just literally verify based on their government issued and recover the account. And it'll be a much smoother process. So this is a very future forward technology.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. We spent the whole time on passwordless. So there's one feature, which is the self-remediation, passwordless self-remediation. Who wants to explain that quickly? And, we'll jump on to more of the other features.
Maybe I can explain a little bit the challenge that we have in the past and why it is great
Yeah.
to have it on board. So in a world where everybody is using passwordless authentication, that could be still scenarios when we have a risk state in Entra ID protection. Yeah, the capabilities that we had before was quite not the best one for passwordless user. One of the options is blocking any access, which is not really a self-remediation. And the second one is that a user will change their password. And by a passwordless user, not really a good option, honestly.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that is really helpful, and that is something what is now available to decide that there is a remediation flow, depending is it a password authentication or passwordless authentication. And if it's, for example, a passwordless authentication, then to decide, hey, what is the authentication strength that we like to see from the user, and having a fresh re-authentication like we had in the past with conditional access and requiring the re-authentication by the sign-in frequency. And that is now available. And from my point of view, really nice to have it integrated in the risk-based CA policies.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. So that like neatly ties up the whole, password going off passwordless, being able to self-remediate if there's a risk signal, and then being able to recover all of that, right? So you can easily now move into a world where you don't have password. And let's first move everyone into, adding passkeys on top of what they already have. But then very soon you need to consider doing an odd strength, so you enforce only passkeys, because we know there are all these downgrade attacks, and that's what everyone will do as people move to passkeys. And now for a quick break for a word from our sponsors. If managing Entra ID apps feels like herding cats, you're not alone. The eNow App Governance Accelerator takes the stress out of keeping Entra secure, providing instant visibility into enterprise apps, permissions, and consent settings. You can automate application cleanup and lifecycle management without toggling through all the Entra blades. eNow is offering a free 7-day upgrade to standard tier so you can access full risk details. Head to appgovscore.com and click try for free to activate your upgrade today. That's appgovscore.com. I'll add a link in the show notes. And thanks a lot to eNow for sponsoring. Cool. Awesome. Right. So let's pick our next feature. There's a lot to pick from. So the big AI announcement was Security Copilot being included in E5. Let's just cover that off quickly. Who was excited about that when you heard about it?
I think this is incredible news. So we spoke earlier about how the Passkey news was excellent for adoption. Well, this is the exact same story, but for Security Copilot, insofar as it's going to allow folks to start trying agents. It's going to allow for that incident summarization in the Defender portal, which I need a fact check on this one, but I'm pretty sure they confirmed also wouldn't even consume SCUs now. So that's super cool. So there's just a whole bunch of adoption benefits here for folks. At the risk of kind of sounding like a gushing fanboy, for me, this is like maybe number one news I've been waiting for so long, because I've been screaming and shouting about this for a long time, that the SCU model had challenges, and it's nice to see this coming forward. And frankly, it's rare and very welcome news that you get something new for what you're paying for already. So that's just a very good message for customers.
Yes, it's been a long time since like some really new features have been added to E5. So this is a big one. It's not unlimited SCU. There is a limit, right? Like it's managed based on the number of users, etc. that you have. But it actually allows people to start playing around and, understanding what all this AI stuff is and how can you use AI to do your, the sort of the security work.
Yeah. You can't go over, so you won't get billed, right? That's
nice.
That's one of the big key things, right? Yeah. So it'll just stop, and then at the next billing cycle, it renews your pool.
And it depends on the features that you use, but I know things like conditional access, they did a lot of work to optimize it. So when it runs, it only uses like one SCU. And yeah, so if you have 1,000 users, you have 400. And even if you run it once a day, it's like 30 SCU. So you can at least start seeing, what it's doing and understand, what are the suggestions. There are 4 agents that are there in Entra that have been added. So we'll talk about. Not all of them went live. I think the app lifecycle was announced. They showed the demo, but I think it will be available only next, like in the coming month for you. In the intro chat, we already covered 2 of the agents with the PMs. So with Jordan, we spoke about the conditional access optimization agent. We have full episode on that, and we had another full episode on the agent for the identity access reviews with identity governance. So those 2 we covered. There's a full-on chat with both the PMs going into detail about those features. So definitely go check it out. There have been lots of new additions. So one of the things with all this agent AI stuff is they are like going at, it's a fast train. So there are new features dropping into the agent, and that's how I see them. Like they're all new and they are learning, the teams are learning of the usage. So the more people using it, there'll be a lot more signals and these agents will get better, right? So this is like, it's like an infant right now. A lot of these agents, there's already immediate value, but you think forward to like 2 years, 3 years when these agents will have a lot more knowledge on how to optimize and improve and reduce the time that you as an admin spend on things, that you can focus on doing more value added things for your business. So there are 4 agents. Who wants to cover, like, have you looked at the identity risk agent and the app lifecycle agent? Yep, Thomas.
So one of the really interesting agents, what I have seen also in the Ignite demo, is the app lifecycle agent, because so far many customers are really struggling with the lifecycle of the application and workload identity. And as you already said, there is maybe more and more integration and also intelligence that will be integrated into the agent. But what we have already seen in the demo was there's some notification to the owner of the application about unused privileges, or if, for example, there's a time for offboarding and so on, and also suggestions who is the owner. And I would hope that we come to some point with a lot of integration, so that I have maybe also our ITSM tooling and also integration to service ticketing, so that I can really integrate that into a full workflow process, that if someone will leave the company, there's an automated suggestion who takes care on the application, and there's a review process that will be automatically triggered, because that is definitely something what is mostly overlooked, to maintain the whole life cycle and also take care about those different phases of the life cycle of a workload and application identity. So that's one of the agents which raised up my particular interest, and yeah, really looking forward to see them in my tenant and giving some tests with that.
In my past life as an Entra admin, app governance was a big part of it. We spent so many cycles, like when you're managing like an 80,000 user tenant, like there are new apps coming in, there are app owners, and the people leave, right? And then there's suddenly an abandoned app, and then we had to go chasing people. Or if we are doing some change and we need them to test, we need to keep hunting all these app owners or tell them to go fix stuff. There's a lot of admin work we do, which is not really Entra, but like chasing up people and messaging them. And if you can have an agent that will just go do that, busy work and give you more time to focus on other things, that'll be a really good one, right? Martin, have you had challenges with all this app governance?
Yeah, so if you have a decent sized Entra tenant, you're going to have multiple FTEs of engineering just continuously chasing different areas where you need to improve the security, or where the hygiene has just fallen down, and your users are so creative in interesting ways of doing things. And it's a lot about when God closes a door, he opens a window, and then the users climb in through the window instead. I'm astonished with what creativity people showed to be able to bypass rules because they needed something done quickly, and then they forgot about it, and then it's there. So it is kind of being able to do this in a cost-conscious manner is something really, really interesting, and try to avoid kind of the technical debt, just accumulating.
Yes.
It's a really big improvement.
Absolutely, yeah. Like even internally at Microsoft, we spend a lot of time. I own a few apps in the Microsoft Corp tenant, etc. There's so much paperwork we need to do. But imagine someone following up with, all the people like, hey, have you done this yet? Like, why are you using secrets? When can we get rid of that? And like all of that admin work is a huge part of the health, right? And this is the place where attackers go. Like we've seen in the history, right? A lot of the compromisers, they go compromise with social engineering, and then they go hide in the cloud, right? They go into the apps, add creds, and stay hidden for sometimes years till they get a time to use it. So the app hygiene is becoming really important, and yeah, that's definitely going to add value.
The NHI management is going to be huge. It's a huge and will continue to be a huge challenge. So any help there would be really appreciated.
Right. And who's looked at the risk agent?
I haven't. And I'm going to be a politician and answer your question with a different answer. And I'm going to say I have spent time on the conditional access agent, though.
Nice.
That one continues to improve, and it continues to get cheaper, like you mentioned. And I'll maybe give just a shout out to folks, because this is something that really blew my mind about that agent. And I guess in general, the way that the Microsoft are approaching the agents is, I was unaware the degree to which these are researched with real Entra admins before they're kind of made generally available. So for example, I discovered today there's a fellow at Microsoft called James Bono, and he's head of economics for Microsoft Security. And he published a full scientific paper with a randomized control trial of, I think, about 160 Entra admins, and it says, okay, well, now show us the efficiency benefits you're getting. And I think it was something like a 60% efficiency improvement on identifying conditional access policies that achieve the same thing, and therefore you could deduplicate them. And when you see the kind of numbers like that, someone for me who's maybe a little bit skeptical of some of this stuff, it kind of just slaps a bit of sense into me and says, oh, wait a second, no, this stuff does have some real value with evidence to prove it.
100%. Let's head into the big news, right? Which is Agent ID and Agent 365. Like we've had Entra for decades. When Azure AD was first stood up, apps was the reason why they created it, because people needed access to apps in the cloud. There had to be a login page and thing to get to the app. And the apps were the Microsoft first party apps at the start, right? Or like Office and SharePoint, etc. So apps has always been there as part of Azure AD, right from the start. Users was there from, even from the on-prem days. Users and devices, they already always existed. So those were the key constructs there. And then groups didn't exist, I think, from day one, but they added groups, very soon after. So all those form the fundamentals of Entra and modern identity. This is like once in a lifetime sort of thing where something new comes along and you add this, right? It's a very new construct. It's new for everyone. And there are now tokens that are being issued to these agents as well.
You said tokens, so Thomas, that's one. I need
that was my trigger word, right?
Yes.
Honestly, we already discussed that sometimes application or workload identities are a tough challenge for organization all the life cycle. And I was afraid the same happens with agents, because we already seen some adoption in organizations about agents that will be created, and also third-party agents will be integrated. So I was really impressed that a lot of capabilities right from the start are part of Agent ID. So I heard one sentence in a session that really bring it to a point. Microsoft likes to extend Entra so that we can manage agent identities with the same tooling like we had with the users, right? So there was conditional access for agents. We got Entra ID protection for agents. For me, aspects about the agent identity with the blueprint and the agent ID that will be created based on the blueprint has some similarity with service principals and app registrations. So I feel a little bit familiar, even I'm new with the agent ID story. So I think it's great to see all the integrations so that we can have familiar tools, and especially also the integration in identity governance, that we can manage what are the permissions that are assigned to agent identities. And so I get we have now a lot of integration with these tools to manage all the agent identities, and having also the integration with the agent registry, that we can see what are the agents that are existing, and also having some sponsorship and ownership delegation makes it really, really efficient to build a life cycle around the agents. And when we can see the number of workload identities per user, which is already really high when we see the statistics from Microsoft, I think with agents it will be dramatically higher, because that will another high scale number that we will see. So overall, with agent IDs or the agent identities, we get a comprehensive solution. And I think there will a lot of things to learn. And I already started with the first thing that after I opened the CA optimization agent, I got the notification, hey, it's time to create an agent identity for that one. So it's quite cool to see also the integration with existing agents by Microsoft.
So I shared last night, but like I'm totally overwhelmed with Agent ID. So if you're out there and like trying to grasp all this stuff, like you're welcome to the club. And in one of the threads, I think that bounced off of that with you, Meryl, was Kyle Marsh. He's one of the guys on the Entra team as well. Kind of stepped in and gave. Well, we see three different ways that Agent IDs get used. One is kind of like on behalf of the user, like we're just delegating a task to the user. One of them is and that's using on behalf of flow. One is to enable the agent to act on its own behalf. So it's like an intern, right? It just runs around and does stuff for you.
Yeah.
And then sometimes these agents need to talk to services that we would normally have a traditional human actually interacting with. Like if we think of Exchange, SharePoint, some of the others, ooh, that's nice. We need something that's like humanish identity to actually communicate with those. Instead of creating an actual user object, we're creating a real user agent agent user, I guess. Is that what we're calling it? For it to interact with basically and do tasks. So some of these are intended to be short-lived, some are intended to be long-lived. And one of the things that I think about often is when we're running a project or you're responsible for a certain tool within an organization, you get a lot of questions and pings about like, hey, how does this thing work? Or what's the progress on this thing? Or how are things going with that? And that's a lot of interruptions. I love those questions because it's teaching opportunity and that's always great. But then it does kind of slow down your flow if you're that SME for a specific thing. And the agents present an opportunity for it to say, like, let's give it access to that project data, right? Let's give it access to the knowledge base for that specific tool. And then you can allow those users to ask those questions against it. And then it kind of reasons and says, here's a status update, right? And then you didn't have to interrupt the SME or the owner of the project or something for those flows. So that could be a short running task. It could be a long running thing. But yeah, those are some kind of interesting use cases, I think, that I see for them.
Yeah. So one, I'm not sure how many of you listened to the podcast with Satya and Dwarkesh last week, I think. And there was a back and forth between them. And one of the questions was, yes, these agents, let's say, right, in the future, these agents, there'll be lots of them helping, doing the work, going out and doing things that, will help optimize and streamline things. And then they asked, like, where does, will Microsoft 365 exist in the future if, who would be buying the licenses for Word, Excel, and so on, right? If the agents are, the ones that will be doing a lot of the work, like you will give it a task, it'll go off and do that. We have on GitHub like code reviews, for example. Now, every time we do a PR, I know in Meister we do now, and everyone's got used to it to say they tag Copilot and say, review this PR, and it does a review and it gives like detailed comments, right? So it's doing all of that. And one of the things that Satya said is, yes, there'll be more agents in your organization, at some point in the future than the number of employees you have, because an employee can have like, access to multiple agents, they'll get it to do work. So eventually it is like people, I know on one side, this is like the whole cloud thing from a few years back. Everyone hated it, right? Like, why is Microsoft saying cloud, cloud, cloud for everything? Like, I'm on-prem, I'm never leaving, I'm never going to the cloud and all of that, right? But it took time, but over 10 years now, it's like no one has that sort of allergic reaction when you say cloud. It's like we're all on the cloud. There are still a few holdouts I know on Twitter who are like, now you're just still pushing cloud on me. But it's sort of, I feel the similar way with agents. It's not something that's impacting you or you're not even thinking of it today. But then over the next, 5 years, 10 years, or this thing moves fast. So who knows? You will be having this agent conversation, and as an IAM admin or security admin, you'll have your business come and tell you, yeah, we are going to get these agents, and they are going to be used in, so and such a way. Then as an admin, like, how do you manage those agents? Like, how do you even go and see, like, what are all the agents that are in the company, and what do I have control over? What do I not have control over? Because there'll be agents that maybe just run on the user's desktop. Like Windows will have agents that might be, they don't even access the network. They might just do some task on the device and maybe, like, convert things to an image, and like they don't access things outside. So there will be this whole set of things that it will eventually pan out, and you will need to manage them. Like, it's going to become, it's a good thing for us in the identity, for our careers. In that way, it's a brand new thing that you're managing, and it's a new skill set, something that you learn. So for me, it's about, right now, it's in sort of learning mode, a lot of this, right? Going on and learning about this. You might not use it yet in your org, but it's going to come, and it'll be good for you to be prepared and know what it is and know what it does. Martin, your thoughts on the
Yeah,
agents?
it's quite interesting, because if you look at how you've worked as an architect or a team lead or a delivery lead, a lot of people, including me, have spent the last almost 20 years primarily working with a low-cost location team and kind of coaching them and giving them the knowledge they need, and kind of lifting them up. I wonder if this is going to be the kind of a similar kind of feelings, but with these agents instead. We have done some testing, and we do see quite, even if all you do is just connect the agent to the right knowledge base without connecting it to anything that is proprietary configuration, I think you still see quite good kind of outcomes in just productivity part, that you can, as an engineer, you can just, fire it off, and then it, use 20 minutes later, it comes back with a quite good solution. That can cut your research time quite a lot, especially in something, in Entra, which always the biggest challenge is that you think you understand how something works, and then, 6 months later, it's been changed. So every time if you haven't done it like, last week, then you probably need to go and see if they've improved it. So the ability to just connect it to the latest and greatest documentation, at least then it will tell you that, hey, there's some new features here that you should consider, and before you go and do this the old school way from 6 months ago.
Right now, I think for a lot of people, it's going to be learning mode, and then eventually your devs, just like how we had with Entra and apps and OAuth. Like when I was an admin like 5-10 years ago, I had to explain a lot of these concepts to devs because they come from the world where they had everything on-prem. All they had to do was throw the app on an IIS or a Windows website server, and it did the auth. They didn't have any code on the auth. They just had, let me just get who the user is, get their current user's identity. That's all the identity code they wrote. Then I had to explain the concept of OAuth and permissions and scope. As the identity admin, I had to explain to the devs what it was and show them the code samples and what they needed to do and so on. So I'm sure a lot of Entra admins today have to do a similar thing as well, explain things like permissions, scopes, and try to get them to use a lower privilege scopes and so on. This is going to be a thing that's going to come to you as well, similar way, right? The devs are going to come and ask. And you can build agents that just use standard service principles as well today, which is what a lot of people did. Even the conditional access optimization agent, Thomas, you mentioned, right? It was asking you to use an agent ID now. So that was just built using a service principal, the old school, just an enterprise app and a service principal. But that didn't give controls to admins. Like you couldn't create a conditional access policy that said, this agent, I'm going to block it, or, I only want certain people to use it. And there's a lot more with an agent. There's a whole blog post on that, right? Like the idea with agent IDs, you get to sometimes create and delete thousands of agents a day. And users can add an agent into a particular chat, maybe on Teams, or add them to a channel in Teams. And that agent should only have access to the files that are in that channel. So there'll be like thousands of these, like one agent blueprint, but thousands of it being added into each individual tenant. And then each one will have its unique permission of what it can access and what it can do. There's a blog post we wrote like back in March, April, that, we're working on OAuth and the permission scopes and how that has to be more granular. And in that, we wrote examples. For example, you might say, yeah, I'm adding an agent, but I want you to have access only for 1 hour to these files. And then the user consents to that permission, and then after 1 hour, the permission goes away. That sort of thing you can't do with service principals and like in the current model. And that's where this whole agent ID and all of the things you can do with it are going to come. Yeah. So lots of new concepts, and like it's going to be a lot of work for us to explain and teach our counterparts in, the cybersecurity teams, the architects, the devs. But it's an interesting and a unique challenge, and a completely new area that, as a dev, I'm excited about. Right. So we have the next big one. There's an official MCP server for Microsoft for Entra. How many of you all have been using some sort of MCP?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, for example, VS Code makes it very easy to work with MCP. I have tried using dev mode in ChatGPT, which is kind of my daily driver, and I've had mixed results on that front. But I'd maybe kind of layer my thoughts on the MCP server to something you mentioned earlier, which was Satya's interview with Rakesh. And one of the things that is so incredible when you start working with MCP servers and you start asking it basic, I'm talking to yourself, Meryl, you created an MCP server, one of the first ones we ever seen for Microsoft Craft and things like that. And you start interfacing with it and you're kind of like, maybe all the software and things I've been developing to manage Microsoft 365 just simply don't matter, because now I can just ask it prompts and it gives me stuff, right? And scripts and things are no longer relevant. But as I've matured in my thinking a little bit more, I find it's more just, what would you say? It's another tool in the tool bag, right? There are some situations where that good old-fashioned script that I've relied on for so long is the way to get the absolute most precise information I need. Whereas there's other things, if I just need a more general steer on things, that's when MCP servers are just really, really, very impressive.
Nathan, you had something?
Yeah, absolutely. It's because of the variable input, right? Like sometimes the model's been updated and now the result you get back the next time is different. And so that's where that like standard script you create, that's really nice. Sometimes documentation might be inaccurate. So I actually had this, I got to enjoy working on that, the newer one for Entra, and I had it build some scripts for me for entitlement management, which has always been tricky because certain attributes that exist in beta, but not in V1, or in V1, but not in beta. And so then you end up having to create something and then go back and then patch something else with and so for me, it's very time consuming to figure out what all those different items are. And so it's pretty neat to be able to just ask the MCP, like, hey, can you just build this out for me? Then go back in and validate that it's accurate. And if it missed something, then I can kind of like adjust that. And the cool thing about it though, is like when you provide feedback, like we got to an opportunity to do, like, oh yeah, we figured out what was all wrong there. First of all, got docs updated, but then also they adjusted that model and boom, like second time it one-shotted it and it was awesome, So I think there's so many cool things like that where when we feed that back into the model, it's like, we get that community improvement, but like now we're not, I don't know, it's just a really nice middleware tool. So it's been really neat to play around with and help it kind of scaffold my stuff as I'm working on it. And then I have to dedupe a whole bunch because it's very verbose and I don't write like that. But
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
The neat thing
good.
I like is it's a cost factor as well, right? Like it's free. Like if you GitHub Copilot on VS Code, you get a free number, like I think 30 requests or something a day. So like you have some amount of usage each day that you can use for free. And then like one of the best values for money, I think it's like $10 or depending on where you are for GitHub Copilot a month. And it's insane the amount of value you get from that, being able to use chat to learn things about your tenant and like try these things out. Whereas with a security copilot, there's a lot of work, extra things you need to do. You just get that, you hook up the MCP, and if you're worried about using like open source ones like my one, you now have an official one from Microsoft that you can use. A bit of permissions. It's made in a way where you still need to grant access. So it's treated as the MCP server from Microsoft for enterprise. It's treated as graph itself. So it is it'll have a new GUID. It's a resource. So your VS Code, you'll need to grant access to the MCP. So all of the other governance you have, you can still apply, like who are the users who can use it. And like it's just going to grow. Right now it's VS Code. You can use it with OpenAI, like ChatGPT and Claude Desktop, but you need to use a custom app. And what they've done is in OpenAI and Claude, they moved it into their very expensive, like you need to have the pro license. So you can't use a custom client ID out of the free versions. But VS Code, you can do it like completely free. Like this is one of the features where you can just try that, like no additional cost. So I would say every admin, you should just go kick the tires, at least in your dev tenant, try it out. And once you get used to it, things that you did before with PowerShell and so on, you'll now go and just quickly get the answer in chat. Opening up the blade, clicking 10 places and going to a setting, and instead of just typing in the chat and having the answer come back, your mind sort of like goes, wow, okay, that's a tool set that I can use. And yes, there's a place for it. You can't have it do something like go analyze all my 80,000, even 1,000 users and check the auth method and give me all the ones that don't use something. Falls over when you give, like your tokens will run out, right? So large volume things, you won't usually want to do it, but the smaller questions and things are good places for you to start, trying it out, connecting to multiple tenants and using it that way.
And it was also great to see that not only stuff, so not, especially before Ignite, there was also the Sentinel MCP server. So there's a lot of good other stuff. So for everybody that loves KQL and is in love with Sentinel, definitely something else to check out.
Yeah, that's, I think, really powerful, the KQL side of it, right? Like people are still getting their heads around KQL. So now you can just ask and have it not just give you the KQL, run it as well for you. So very powerful way to do that.
Yeah, but learning KQL is also fun. So nevertheless, a great idea to learn KQL.
I see a question in the chat there from Andrew talking about MCP, and he asks if MCP is old hat compared to Anthropic Skills that just came out. And the thing that came to mind for me is I think one of the big differences between MCP and Skills, as my understanding is, MCP is more about establishing access to things, and Skills is about then how you would leverage that access. It makes one thing come to mind for me, and you kind of heard it earlier where Nathan mentioned that everything going on in Entra just now with Agentic AI, it's a fire hose of information, and it's a lot to digest. AI in general just now is, I feel like every day I open X, there's some new crazy AI trend that it just it feels like an assault on my ability to stay at the cutting edge. And I guess maybe one thing that comes to mind for folks, for like Entra pros who listen to your show, is we're still in that era of AI where things are moving so fast and nothing's particularly stable, that in my head, it reminds me back to when you had things such as Azure and AWS first coming out in between 2006 to 2010. And at the end of the day, you didn't have to be a cutting edge adopter then. Where things really start to mature, maybe 3 to 5 years later, between kind of 2013 to 16, you really start to see things mature and take off. One of the big trends I see folks getting is they get a little bit nervous. All this AI stuff is just so intense and it's so new and it's so constant. I would maybe kind of just put like a kind of ease yourself into this kind of statement out there and saying, look, don't get too panicky about this kind of stuff. We're all in it together. And we're just at that stage where we're playing with fire now and we're trying to see how it all turns out.
Yes, I think that's a really good advice and guidance, right? And comparing to Azure, yes, a lot of these things that announced, you might not use it today or see it, but in a few years' time, it'll be like a natural thing, right? You would still be, it'll be something that you come across. And people who get in early and understand these concepts, they'll be in a much better position when those issues and things come to you, and you'll know exactly what to pull from.
Absolutely.
Key thing. Right. So we are running out of time. There was a lot on the whole GSA and all of the AI capabilities that it brings. I think Ignite is still not over. I think even today there are some sessions. I don't know if it's finished. There's one on global secure access and bringing in AI. We spoke a lot of Agent ID, which covers things that you integrate with Entra, but there'll be so many agents that don't come into that space. There'll be MCPs, like not just the Microsoft ones, but there'll be different types of MCPs your users might be using. Like you wouldn't even know that they're already using those MCPs, and how do you bring those governance visibility? So global secure access, they've done a lot there, and there are lots of demos on features like shadow AI detection, prompt injection protection, where it sort of sits in the middle and is able to prevent harmful prompts being provided, etc., by users. So that's a unique thing that GSA plays. It can go sit in the middle of the traffic, even on the user's desktop, to things even running on the server and the network layer protection that it can apply from there. That's a unique offering in that overall space of things with the secure access. Thoughts on that? Anyone's used it or tried it out or looked at those challenges?
I can take a stab at this one. Certainly, I think you see this convergence of a whole bunch of the Microsoft 365 stack now, insofar as Purview and the capabilities it has for AI security, Defend for Cloud Apps, the capabilities it has for AI security, including discovering MCP servers that your folks might use, and then Entra Global Secure Access, really complementing that and being able to see it at the network level. Again, total fanboy here. That's just such the unique value proposition of 365 is all these various levels of the stack. You're able to really specifically target, well, what matters to me. Is it the oversharing, in which case I can use Purview and DLP and layer that in with Global Secure Access? Or is it just the discovery in the first place with things like Defender for Cloud Apps? So seeing GSA kind of bring into the fold and being able to discover those AI apps and do things, like, oh, hey, maybe it can identify even if I'm on an unmanaged AI application such as ChatGPT, be able to control the prompts that a user can input and the responses they can receive. That's huge. And there are not many alternatives out there. So it makes GSA really quite unique.
And file policies?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we finally get that like integration with Purview, right? So it says, hey, if it has a sensitive information, don't allow it to be uploaded into that AI app. So, I mean, that's huge. Yeah.
And I think another feature that was really great to hear as an announcement was the B2B support, because I think there is a lot of scenarios where we still have some external user accounts in our Microsoft Entra because we need to provide access to resources behind private access, and to have this now coming for a global secure access. Once again, a new capability that was hardly missing in some integration scenarios.
Yes, yeah, that's a huge one. People have been it's been an ask from day one, right? Like private on-prem apps. I don't want to create an on-prem account for these guests, but I still need to give them access to those apps. And now you can do that with GSA for private access. Perfect. There are still lots in ID governance. There are lots of integrations between ID governance and other features with access reviews that were all announced. There's a lot going on in this space. It's huge. The one last one, this is not really directly tied to Entra. It isn't part of the Entra announcements, but Entra contributed to this, is the Microsoft baseline security. A lot of people have been asking for that, right? Like, how can I secure my tenant? For security conscious customers, like, how can I go tighten things up and secure it? So baseline security is a tool for enterprises and admins who know bit about what they're doing. It gives them all the config and lets you harden your tenant, right, across the board. Have any of you seen that? You're excited about it?
The mention of simulations gets me really excited because that's always been the thing. Like, well, what happens when I make that change? So I loved seeing that in there. That like, hey, yeah, it'll actually do some simulations and deployment protection. And so those are really neat additions for sure. Because like Mister's great, it gives you all the recommendations, right? But we're not really like simulating what happens when we make this change. And then yeah, so that's a pretty cool one.
And what we have seen so far, it will be fully integrated into the portal. And it's always great because it's also a lower entry point. People can start without any community tools. Also, they are great out there. Having also the native integration, and also what I have seen so far in the demo, there should be also quick fix features available. Is always great.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
really
perfect. Yeah.
great improvement. And my favorite feature in CA is still the ability to do a report only on CA policies. I saved my bacon so many times. I thought I had understood what this would do, and I was very wrong. So, really great feature with the simulation.
Yes, yeah. So and this helps solve that problem, right? Like if you have set up a new tenant, and I believe they have different profiles of the types of tenant that you want to have, and it will suggest the policies that you should apply depending on that profile. But yeah, if you have a new tenant and you are using it for like specific scenarios, then you can just go turn on everything, right, in the new tenant, and like, secure it, lock it down, and then be able to go in and open out things when you do need it. Awesome. So thanks so much, everyone coming in. Your closing thoughts before we close off. Start with you, Martin.
Actually, it's very interesting to see the outcome from this and compare that to the Gartner MQ for Access that came out just a few days ago, the updated version. I'd really recommend reading that and comparing that with all the new features.
Cool. Thomas?
Yeah, so spend a little bit time the next weeks to learn more about the Ignite announcements, and also have always open eyes, because I was also this week surprised about some small changes on the portal, some features that seems to be added. So it's always great to see also the small improvements and small features alongside of the big announcements. So definitely something you like to learn. And also, don't forget to learn about agent identities so that you are ready when the devs are starting to use them, and you have your defender capabilities and governance capabilities in place.
Ru?
I guess I'll echo a little bit about what Thomas said insofar as number one, take a deep breath, calm down, go into this stuff nice and slowly. Ignite is an insane fire hose of information, and you don't have to digest it all at once. So just, me, myself, I'm tendency to get overwhelmed with it, and I just, I empathize with a lot of folks in that regard. That said, like Thomas said, it's very clear, read of the room going into 26. Agentic AI, that's the thing. And if you're an Entra admin and you are not starting to get on top of this stuff, that's debt that you're going to accumulate. Don't do what I do and head to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center and go to Agents, All Agents, which now shows as an Agent 365. And you see you've got 149 agents. And you're like, how did this happen? I didn't touch this. Again, go into deep breath, start to understand it. Don't be so scared of it. And it'll be very good for your career if you can get a head start in this kind of stuff.
Nathan?
Yeah. So I'm a chaser of the shiny. I'm like, all these new things. But don't forget the old things, because those are still a problem. And so we tend to focus so much on all these new things and really worried about like, I'm going to fall behind because I'm not learning the stuff. But all those things that we're supposed to be taking care of, those are still critical and important. So definitely pace yourself. All of it's a marathon, and try to balance that for sure. Because I'm going to want to dive in and just spend all my time reading this when really I've got bigger issues over here that I probably should be addressing. So try to prioritize, which is something I always struggle with too. So that's good.
Yes, yeah. And yeah, so much wisdom from all of you. Yeah, it can feel really overwhelming with, all these things coming in. You don't know where to start. I have a few different approaches. If you're early in career and you're struggling to, make yourself get a foothold, agent and agent ID, like everyone is new. So this, you're now in the starting line. It's not like someone who has had years of experience with conditional access and, all the other things with apps and OAuth and stuff. Yes, their experience will help them. But if you're really new, like these are areas where you can sort of master. It's a starting line for everyone when it comes to a lot of the AI agentic things. And you can sort of build some of that muscle early on and be sort of the champion, the person who knows about this that people can gravitate towards. So yeah, if you're early in career, those are things you can look at. For a lot of the others, it's about you have your current challenges, your things you need to do. So, focus on that. The important things will anyway bubble up. So you don't need to feel overwhelmed with everything that's coming through. And these sort of the Entra chat is all about giving you this knowledge, right? So you can have it in your mind, but you can use it when it's needed, right? For me, it's all about just having these things in your head, and your brain will make that connection. When a problem comes up at work and you go like, hey, I heard this, or I saw this, and then able to connect the dots and provide the solution to your users, your teams in your company. So yeah, so it's a crazy time. This doesn't happen often, which is why it feels crazy. Things like a new agent concept coming into your directory and being able to manage all of that. But it's a very exciting time as well. I feel like our careers, etc., in identity IAM, it's sort of expanding to new things. We don't need to fear. It's like, for us, it's being able to ride that wave. So thank you everyone for joining in and sharing. Looking forward to expanding a lot more in all the upcoming Entra Chat podcasts on all these topics. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Cheers.